Our host, the world-renowned Christine Enville, an IFBB professional, 3 times world champion, a mentor, an icon, and of course, a founding co-owner of the best supplements money can buy, International Protein. In this episode, we talk about stretching. It seems simple, but so many people get it wrong. So we ask when, how, and how much is too much. We then jump into collagen, the benefits, and which sources give you the best results. All right, Christine, stretching. Is it a yes? Is it a no? Is it before? Is it after? Tell me, what are your thoughts on it?
Okay, so stretching, again, as we get older, becomes more important. But coming back to the basics and the theory around stretching is, I did, phys ed, PE, what do you call it, physical education in year 12.
Yep.
And I remember we had to design workouts and we always had to put a warm-up and a stretching before you pretty much did anything. The reality, though, obviously, as I got into training, there wasn't really a lot of time to do that kind of stretching because, it was very generic, the stretching that we did in, PE and all that kind of stuff. But
I've also been told that the muscle, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's kind of like chewing gum. You've got to kind of warm it up a little bit before it stretches. So if you actually stretch at the beginning of a workout, it doesn't make sense. And it's like cold chewing gum and it can snap easily.
Yeah, that is 100%, what is going to happen. So to me, the stretching is so applicable or it's so specific to whatever it is that you're trying to do as well.
Yep.
So if you're trying to do a sprint or something like that where you're going to be firing very quickly.
This is a little close to home, isn't it?
It is, but it's
We had a conversation prior to this that, we're down at the park throwing a ball around, myself and a mate, and he was European, didn't know what a rugby ball was. So I was teaching him how to pass backwards. That concept just for him, he'll listen to this, he'll laugh. But that concept for him was just, it didn't make sense. But we went through that, having a bit of fun, and I said, okay, I'm feeling good, let's do some sprints. So, having not sprinted in, I don't know, at least 10 years, I thought, it'd be really great to get that back and have that be in that kind of physical shape. So I thought, let's do this. And so the first 2 sprints, they were fine. Third sprint, ping, my hammy goes, and I got this little tear in the hammy, and I was like, shit, that's just put me back six weeks or however long it takes to repair. And then, so I walk it off. I think I'm all healed or not all healed, but I can go to my martial arts, I can train a little bit, do all that kind of stuff. So on the Monday, this was on the Friday, on the Monday, ended up having the old 3-on-1 scenario, and of course, I'm sort of like, bring it on to the other guys in the class, and the first kick, ping, off it goes again. So yeah,
but that's demonstrating how it's so specific to the activity that you're doing, and a lot of that dynamic movement, dynamic explosive movement is obviously going to need a different kind of flexibility to what slow controlled weight training versus a sport, I guess, where you're even more dynamic and you could be potentially moving in all different kind of ways. But that also is a difference, I guess, between muscular flexibility and tendon flexibility. Something which is probably not just, people talk about flexibility, they talk about joint flexibility, they talk about tendons. When it does come to a lot of sport, it's the actual muscle that needs to be flexible, and also that's where the warming up comes into it. So bringing that back to the weight scenario, there's obviously many, many different ways to weight train, and the way that we always used to weight train is what we call the progressive overload. But essentially that's starting off on a very light weight and then going slightly heavier, working up until you're at your heaviest weight where you're failing on your 8 to 10, maybe your 6 to 10 reps for weight training. So how I always saw that was that it was those first couple of sets, so the warm-up set and maybe the first set, which were what was basically stretching and priming the muscle to do the work that I needed to do. So no point in doing something which was totally unrelated to what I was going to be doing in the gym, because I wasn't necessarily warming up the actual muscles and tendons that I needed to, but also the I'm gonna say the proprioceptors, which is basically like the nerves which are telling which bits to fire when, the sequence of firing. Because I think that's a lot of what's gone wrong with like your hammy tweak, is that you're telling your body to do something, but it's not necessarily doing it in sequence. So the muscle's kind of contracting when it's supposed to be relaxing. And of course, the body has this little trick where if you try to move too quickly, it protects the joint because it reads the force that you're putting on and it thinks, oh God, I'm going to hyperextend that joint. So the opposite muscle contracts to stop that from happening. And that's a stretch reflex response to the body. So it's kind of your body's way of protecting the joints. So if you're not, ready for that, then it's going to all fire off in the wrong way. So you've got to be warming up specifically for whatever is the activity that you're going to be doing. So
going from 0 to 100 is a really bad idea.
Really bad, yeah.
And even, not just in one session as well. If I'd actually gone running first, that would have helped. For a few weeks.
Worked into it, exactly.
Yeah.
Like gone for a bit of a jog and then kind of built up from there. And that's where I talk about getting older, because as kids we seem to be able to do anything. We can go from, running around the playground, we can swim, we can jump, we don't even think about it. We just kind of go and do it. And then as we get older and we sit at office desks, we sit at our computer and we sort of like hold our bodies in a set position for a long time, like 8 hours at a time, we're kind of conditioning those muscles to be a lot shorter, or condition those ligaments to shorten up, because it's all in response to how we're moving throughout the day. And then we go off and try to do something and it's not right. But just coming back to sort of, to the weight training side of it, it's a good idea to make sure that you're comfortable that whatever the body part is that you're going to work is warmed up. So, for example, legs are such a big part of our body. So you might spend a little bit more time warming up the joints around your hips and your knees before launching straight into doing some heavy squatting. And some people will do that by, warming up on a leg extension and not really counting that as one of the exercises that they're doing. They're more saying, okay, that's just getting some blood into the muscle, because again, it's about getting that blood into the muscle, getting it used to firing in the right sequence, and then getting the joint warmed up. So that is really, really important. But it's not necessarily going out and doing a full on, you see the stretch the stretch cages, and it's not doing like a full routine circuit in one of those. So it's really being more specific about what muscle group you're about to train. I'm not going to go stretch my chest if I'm about to do a leg workout. So that's the beforehand, but that's more about, like, say, warming up, and it's more about not launching into your top weight straight out because you're not set, like your body's not primed for it. But using the range of motion, because obviously on a lighter weight, you can make sure you're using full range of motion. So you're stretching under the tension, you're stretching under the weight, and you're stretching in the exact movement that you're going to be doing for that particular workout. And then once you've done, like, you don't have to do that for then every exercise within that body part, but generally the first one that you're doing, and you're generally going to do, maybe some kind of compound work. So again, you see people squat. A lot of the time they'll be like just doing body weight squats just to kind of like get used to that movement. And also that gives you opportunity to feel if there is a part that's a bit tight, if you kind of do that a little bit slowly. So that's what I would be doing beforehand, because the thing to remember with weight training is that you don't want to have too flexible a joint, because you are putting a massive load on a joint to grow muscle. You're going heavy. And you need to have stability at the joint. Mm-hmm. So you can't be too flexible. So someone who's doing ballet, for example, or yoga,
yep.
They're not doing heavy weight. It's all body weight, but they have to be able to do some like crazy flexible things. So that's a tendon flexibility, and the tendons around the joint, the ligaments are getting stretched over a period of time. And I have a story from way back when I started. And I remember I did the fitness instructor course. I didn't do the aerobics part of it. I just wanted to do the theory. And the instructor there was telling us about this ballet dancer that he knew, because he was also a physio, and he said she'd come to him like 38 years old, ballet all of her life, incredible flexibility, but then she tried to do weights and there was just that too much play in her joint, and she'd hurt herself because under the weight the joints were too flexible. So what she had created was a great scenario for what she had needed to do, which was her ballet, but then when she tried to move into another area, it wasn't right for that, and she had to, she really suffered from that because the ligaments were too stretched. And after that much period of time, in the same way that they tightened from doing the same thing, hers were kind of too stretched and they weren't coming back. They won't just spring back, like they permanently were stretched.
It's interesting to think that people can be too flexible, isn't it?
Yeah.
I actually met a lady the other day, because I live in a tight body, and I was sort of explaining my tightness issues, and I was probably talking about my hemi, in fact.
You probably were.
And then she said she had the opposite, so that really fascinated me.
Yeah. So for weight training, you want to have, and again, it's making sure you have enough range of motion, because one, you want to be able to do the exercise properly, because a lot of people you do start to see, because the muscle gets tight and it gets the muscle itself, locks together, and then the tendons and everything get tight, and then they shorten the range of motion that they're using for the exercise. And then when they go to pose on stage, they can't open up properly and they can't show their body off properly. And they can't, because you've got to actually be quite flexible, particularly through your shoulder joints, to be able to, to hit your front double bicep properly, to hit your rear poses. So again, particularly a lot of the guys who carry a lot of mass through their chest, they can create tightnesses like through their front delts and through their chest, and they can't actually open out enough to hit their back poses properly. So they need to be mindful of that. And that's where the best way for stretching for bodybuilding is actually after you've trained, but stretching, again, the muscle group that you've worked whilst it's still warm, and doing the stretching at that point in time. So again, that's going to help with the joint mobility. But with bodybuilding, what happens obviously is that, the thing of getting toned, and I think we did talk about this in one of the other podcasts, is that it's the muscle cross bridges, so your actin and your myosin, which cross over each other and pull the muscle together and cause that contraction. They get more and more engaged. So when someone's untoned, the actin and the myosin are basically not engaged at all. So the muscle just kind of is, but then you contract and they spring into action and they work like rows, like interlacing rows. If you imagine a row on a boat, so that one's going one way, one's going the other, and they pull the muscle together to contract.
Okay.
So as you get fit and toned, they stay what they call more engaged. Right. So they're already like half contracted, and that's what gives muscle that toned and tighter look. So then bodybuilders go to the extreme because they create more muscle fibers, and they are like constantly engaged because of how they train, gives it that very dense look to the muscle. And that needs to be released, because that isn't actually not a good thing, because then it can start to cause like adhesions where it's like permanently stuck. And that's where you can get little tears and things if they're not smoothly firing over each other, or just that discomfort of not being able to kind of move properly, because that's I guess that word muscle tied, or that thing muscle tied that you hear where people kind of actually can't move because their muscles actually stopping them from moving. So it's beyond stretching. It's more like the actual massage to kind of break down the adhesions. And there's a few different techniques. I think one of them's the stripping technique, where they use kind of like a steel rod or something to basically like break up the fibers and make sure that they are not sticking together. Because again, a lot of the pain and a lot of the injuries will come from it, but the first signal before the injury is the pain, and the tightness is from the muscles creating knots and being too tied together. So I think it's really like stretching is really important. The more muscle that you get, and the older that you get, that you're doing it properly. So you're doing like the body part that you've trained, you're doing that after, but beforehand you're warming it up properly. But I think the most appropriate thing is to warm it up on the body part that you're going to be doing, like actually doing some light weights of the movements that you're going to be doing to make sure that you are feeling everything properly.
Okay, so we do some light weights and then rest for a period?
No, you pretty much go straight into workout. Yeah, you'll feel when you're warm, like, because if you rest, you cool down again.
Yep.
So you have to kind of, like I say, you feel, if something feels a little tight, then go and, maybe you'll have some specific stretches that you do. Like, you don't have to do the whole encyclopedia of stretching. I actually bought a stretching book by a martial artist, and I use 2 stretches out of that book regularly. And that's for my lower back stretch. So it's like the cat, when you arch over like the cat, and then the opposite way, because I get lower back tightness some days, and I find that fixes it up straight away. So I do that regularly. Yep. I do another stretch too. Actually, I do the one where you lay down on your back and you have one leg out straight and the other leg bent, and you cross your knee over, head goes the other way. Yep. And stretching again, lower back stretching.
Keep your shoulder to the ground.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Yep. So that's hip and lower back sort of stretching. So there are a couple that I do really regularly because of issues that I had years and years and years ago around my early days of weight training, and tweaked a few things, and physios have said, you need to keep the flexibility in that lower back area. So it's not something you directly work out, but you use it in literally everything that you do at the gym if you're standing up, or
everything's hips.
Yeah, hips and lower back. So so that's around weight training. But I know after
how long would you stretch after you've trained, like on each stretch?
It's going to depend on the person, because it depends if you still feel incredibly tight, then keep stretching. Yeah. Don't leave it half done. So yourself, if you've ever been to done stretching, where the first one you you feel like, oh God, like that's, that's really, really tight there. Hold it what's comfortable as well. Like everyone has a different level where you might be able to tolerate in that particular position for 10 seconds and someone else it might be a little bit longer. So I think it really has to be what feels good, like what feels good for you. And sometimes, like with my back stretch, I might do five sets, I guess, of, because I'll do one way, then I'll do the other way until it feels good. Like
the durations of 20 seconds or something.
That's what I mean. Like nobody's sitting there with the clock watch.
I'm just intrigued.
Yeah.
Because, with yoga, they go for the, there's the yin side of it where they get into the 3-minute stretches.
No.
I think that's what do they call it? The deep tissue kind of.
No. Yep. Let the masseuse do that.
Yep.
Go that's like if you're trying to break up adhesions and really get that work done, then try to get that massage thing. And that's something where I know I've really not done well. Like I've waited till I have an acute problem, maybe a chronic problem, and then I'll go get that all broken up by, a proper remedial masseuse, and it friggin' hurts. And if you get a good one, and I know I've had some really bad lockups and adhesions through my hips and what do you call it? The TFL up around the top of the hip. There's a little floating muscle, and then the one down the side of the tibial band, the IT band, and the TFL around the top there. And going to the masseuse, I think it took the first one was excruciating, the second one was a little less excruciating, and the third one I couldn't even feel because he'd fixed the problem. So that was an actual acute problem. And obviously now I think it's like, if I had to time it, your duration might be like 20 seconds to a minute. But most of the time it's like I say, what kind of feels comfortable or until it feels good. There are other stretches that are more like nerve stretches that I don't know if you've ever been given them by physios over the years, but they're a pulsing stretch. So they basically are breaking up adhesions around the nerves so that nerves can travel properly. And they're ones where, again, in the early days of my bodybuilding career, not knowing that you weren't supposed to raise your head off the bench when you're benching, and you've probably done that, Ash. You're nodding. So a lot of the time when people start out their bench press, instead of keeping their head flat back on the bench, they tend to curve their head forward. And that plus the benching gave all kind of problems through my back and into my arms. And I used to do like what I'd call the pulse. It's a common one, the pulsing nerve stretch, where you kind of pulling your head towards your opposite shoulder, and then the arm on the opposite side is like rotating backwards and pulsing. Right. But to undo an adhesion of a nerve, you have to pulse. You can't just do a continuous stretch. Right. So those ones that pulsing stretches are also kind of good. And again, that's normally something where you have you've got adhesions around the nerve, which is causing an impingement and causing like a nerve pain, which is a different thing to a tight joint pain. So depending on what it is, there's like a whole bunch of different things, but it is really good to get a hold of a good stretching book, because like I say, you'll find that there's, out of the hundreds of stretches, you'll probably find like 5 that are really applicable to what it is that each person needs to do, depending on where they get tight. You talk about the hips, hip flexors can get really tight, front delts and pecs. For other people, it's their back or traps that get really tight. So depending on what it is, it's good to get those ones. Because I do a lot of the F45 now that COVID's kind of over, we're able to do our stretching after the class. Now, interestingly, it's very club specific doing the stretches, and the F45 themselves actually don't recommend a stretch after the class. They say a dynamic stretch, which I think that's like a pulsing type of stretch type thing. So they're saying when the muscle's warm, don't try to overstretch it. But we do a stretch kind of cool down after the class, and I do find that helps as part of the warm-up. Again, we don't spend a lot of time. They do enough of a warm-up to get the blood flowing, and they incorporate some, stretching, again, flexibility around the hips, lower back, not so much the upper body. It is mostly like hips and lower back are the kind of areas where, for most things, and I guess a lot of the movements that they are going to do are the parts that you need to warm up, but nobody goes really overboard on that. But combination of stretching your muscles, stretching your joints, and looking at getting, some kind of deep tissue massage or anti-adhesion massage to keep the muscle flexible, because that's probably most important for a bodybuilder for growth.
Okay. Let's just change directions a wee bit. Obviously, we have to come up with subjects for the podcast, and we get asked a few questions on our Facebook page. We answer them, do all those sorts of things. But occasionally I jump into Google and I say, okay, what what are people actually searching? And collagen popped up. So I thought that would be an interesting topic to discuss. All I know collagen really is the thing that makes you look better as you age, sort of thing. You know, it's in the skin creams and things like that. And I really don't know much about it. Can you sort of throw some light on it?
Well, it's probably a really good topic to talk about after the stretching topic, because ligaments, of course, are made up of collagen. So it's after, I guess, your muscle mass. Your collagen makes up a massive amount of the lean tissue in your body. So collagen is in all your ligaments, all your tendons, in your skin, in your bone, all your connective tissue is all made up. All your blood vessels, everything is made up of collagen. Collagen itself is made up of about 50 different types of collagen. It's not like one thing, but there's 4 most common types, and I think even 3 which are most talked about. And I'm going to talk about type 2 collagen first, because that is the one which is mostly your cartilage. It's obviously what's protecting your joints. So from a bodybuilding point of view, it's, to me, very important. Like, if you get joint pain and wearing down your cartilage because of all of the repetitive weights that we do, it's a really great supplement. Now, years and years and years ago, and I'm talking probably like more than 20 years ago, there was a really great product on the market that had a bird collagen. Bird cartilage was the type 2 collagen that they used. So it was a product that had obviously glucosamine and chondroitin and a whole bunch of like citrus bioflavonoids and different compounds to help like make that product work. But it was more effective even than shark's cartilage. Now, it's really interesting because nobody really talks about those type of ingredients anymore. It's almost like, does it even exist? Because like now joints is all about curcumin and, anti-inflammatory and all that kind of thing. But the actual, bird cartilage was shown in studies, or people who were like ready to have hip replacements and stuff were taking this particular supplement, and they didn't need to have surgery after like a 12-week period. Like it actually had rebuilt the cartilage around the joint, or, had definitely minimized the amount of damage. So, my experience with taking that product was, I had knees which were incredibly sore from, heavy weight training, and, taking after it was a long-term thing, but after about 4 to 6 months of taking it, the pain had pretty much gone away. So I believe it had rebuilt. So that's, to me, is the bodybuilding kind of collagen, is really the one which is helping to protect your cartilage. As far as like bird cartilage, I don't know if there's any products on the market at the moment that have that in, because it's apparently, I don't know whether the bird flu had anything to do with people kind of not being able to touch it, because unfortunately a lot of these collagen products come from animals. So whenever there's a kind of a disease like BSE or bird flu or any of those kind of diseases, then there's potential that can work its way into the raw material stream. So there's always a kind of a fear around that, and that's why that has to be kind of processing, and everything has to be done very, very carefully. So if there are any products on the market that have the bird collagen, and you have collagen joint product problems, the stuff is actually fantastic.
So rate that over the shark.
Yes,
yep.
Yeah, that was definitely it was shown to be more beneficial than the shark. But if you can't get the bird one, then you're going to have to use the shark one. But I think there was things like squalene, and then there's obviously shark's cartilage, but your MSM, your chondroitin, and all those kind of things all work together in that. So that's one type. Now, apparently too, just doing a little bit more reading on that one should be taken on an empty stomach, that type of collagen. It's a whole collagen. Sorry, it's a whole collagen, meaning that it's in its native form and hasn't been hydrolyzed. So that's where I go talk about the other type 1 and type 3, which is the one which we associate with our skin, with our connective tissue, with our bone, and obviously anti-aging and youthfulness and all that kind of stuff. Because basically collagen's giving the elasticity to all of those parts of our body. So it allows us to just, stretch and the ligament doesn't break. Imagine if it was made out of brittle, some kind of brittle material, like you'd break, your body would fall to pieces basically. Now that, on the other hand, if you take it in the whole form, and I think that's essentially what gelatin is, your body just breaks it down into the amino acids that are in it and just utilizes it. However, now the hydrolyzed form, which is your small peptides, and we've talked about peptides because they are the small clusters of amino acids. 2-3 chain length. Now, those apparently are able to be absorbed by the body and then sent to the area where the collagen is required rather than being broken down into the single amino acid. So if you take collagen as a whole protein, you don't get the same benefit as if you take it as a hydrolyzed protein. So I think majority of the supplements on the market that are collagen are a hydrolyzed form of collagen. So that's where, the studies are coming out that, yes, it does actually work in helping to repair those, parts of our body, get rid of wrinkles and, improve our connective tissue and improve the elasticity of our blood vessels and all of that kind of thing. Now, with the collagen, the type 1 and the type 3, so the type 1 and 3 both are present in those things. I think it's bone where it's only type 1. But what happens as we age is that the type 1 diminishes. And obviously the type 3 becomes a higher proportion. And I was kind of like blowing Ash's mind here before because it is a little bit complex. But the thing with collagen is what makes them different is that the way that they themselves, the structure of them. So like I say, they're very well studied and they're very, very complex, physical, their own little physical structures. They're all very different, and that's what makes them one type or another. And I was reading that the type 1 is a very much more organized structure than what the type 3 is in the way that its little matrix fits together. So essentially that's what gives our skin its tightness. So as it decreases, and the other one, which is less organized, which I guess gives us that sort of floppy look, as the organized collagen, which is type 1, decreases, that's what causes the sagging and the way that the skin kind of ages and caves in and all that kind of stuff. So if you're looking from a sports perspective and making sure that your ligaments and your joints are strong and everything's working properly, then you got to have your type 1 and your type 3. Which is obviously your bovine collagen. The fish collagen or the marine collagen is mostly type 1. And that's where that, I guess, kind of finds its way into more beauty products because it's more specifically about the anti-aging and replacing what is, being lost from your body, essentially. Now, that's from, collagen, the dosages that they're looking at is somewhere around the 2.5 grams up to about 10 grams. So it is a definite supplement rather than a protein. Like, whilst it's protein, because of the way that your body's treating it, like it's sending it to the area to remake the collagen, it's not there being metabolized. So if you're looking at collagen as a protein source,
and there are some of them on the market, isn't there?
Correct. Yeah. Trying to replace whey powder or something like that because, they are a whole bunch of amino acids and it's very, very low in fat and it's low in sugar and all that kind of thing. It's missing tryptophan, so it's missing one of your amino acids there, one of your essential amino acids. But because if it's, you can't have it both ways. Like basically if it's going to repair all these parts of your body, it's not there to be used nutritionally. So we actually don't recommend it as a replacement for a whey protein. Some people say that they do that and it's fine. And I guess at the end of the day, your body will start to consume if it needs it. But it's a more effective taken in a 2.5 to 15 gram dosage. So there was a study with older people, and I don't know how old, I'm thinking it was like over 60, people who basically get muscle wastage due to aging. So they gave them 15 grams of collagen or nothing and put them through a weight training program, and they did actually rebuild more muscle by having just the 15 grams of collagen. So again, that to me is a supplement. Like, because most people would have like a 30-gram serving of a whey protein. So it's
a supplement as well as your proteins.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's why people are having it in that, they put it in coffee, adding it to smoothies and doing all that kind of stuff with it. Because, there's the studies that have been done around, that 2.5 up to like 15 gram type of thing. Yeah, it's definitely a supplement to your regular food or to your protein powder because your body is using it in a totally different way. You don't want to use it as a dietary protein. You want to use it as a building block protein. So you want it to be able to be sent directly to where it's needed. Now, the only thing there is that just taking collagen on its own isn't really proven as to whether it's the collagen doing it, because it definitely needs to have vitamin C to make it actually form the collagen in your body. And I think zinc and copper are also very, very important. So a lot of the studies that have been done as part of a full-on supplement. It may have like resveratrol, other, antioxidant type of, ingredients and herbs and nutritional compounds. I think one of them had coenzyme Q10, resveratrol, and another couple of, antioxidant type compounds. and together they all worked. But there's the studies, there hasn't been a lot done with just pure collagen to see if that actually works, because obviously you need everything to be there to create the compound, much like you need, you know, all of your essential amino acids to grow muscle tissue. You need to have all the other cofactors to actually grow the ligaments and the tendons and repair the skin and do all that kind of thing. So you do need to be mindful that you got to have it with a vitamin C type of content, or it's not going to be as effective. But yeah, collagen is definitely, you know, it's around to stay, I believe, because like all things, like we talked about with pre-workouts, there's just going to be more and more and more research come out about these things. I know, you know, in Australia, there's a company called Gelita, which actually makes the collagen, and they've even fractionated that hydrolyzed collagen down into more active biofractions and are looking at really specific areas, you know, where that's going to like really target skin or is going to really target joints. So they're looking at, you know, which fractions of the collagen act in certain ways in the body and really trying to get quite specific. So it's only going to, you know, get better from here. But yeah, as I said, it's one of those things where, you know, try it for yourself. You are looking at about an 8-week period before you'll get
like a loading period.
It's not so much I guess it's not a loading period as much as you need stuff to grow and change. So it's like anything in the body, it doesn't happen overnight to rebuild structures and that type of thing. But I think it was, you know, it's about after an 8-week period where people have noticeable changes and, you know, less wrinkles, you know, less fine lines. And as I said to you, when I was taking the bird cartilage in the product, it was about a 4-month period where I kind of just realized like, oh, I don't have any pain anymore. Whereas I'd gone from like, I would wake up every morning and my knees would just be so sore. It would kind of be hard to get moving. And I was only like, you know, I was like barely 30. So that's, you know, now I'm fine and I'm nearly 50. But that was there. It wasn't an overnight thing. And it was just one, you know, you kind of going along and one day you realize that the problem's gone. And it's the same thing with these products is you're not going to get, you know, 1 week of taking it or using it is not going to make a difference. But if you look at yourself over a period of that 2 months, and that's when a lot of the studies said that was where the impact was shown. But then you have to keep on taking it forever. It's like you don't just get to that period. And if you stop, then it will go backwards again. So, yeah. But, yeah, as I said, the main source is obviously fish for type 1 and then the bovine for types 1 and 3. And, you know, shark cartilage and bird cartilage is type 2. Take one with food, which is the hydrolyzed form, which is your types 1 and 3. And the cartilage ones are the ones that you take without food. And the dosages on those are much smaller. Like you're talking about like 500 milligram kind of dosages as opposed to say 2.5 to 15 gram type of dosages.
Cool. Well, that got complex quickly, but
you had to ask. You had to ask, Ash.
I did. Right.
So, but yes, do I recommend collagen? Yeah, depending on what you're trying to do. It definitely, I think, would have a good benefit. But as I said, it's got to be in combination with all those other ingredients.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Words of wisdom. If you like what you've heard, recognize that these tips, they're free. So show your support by becoming a loyal international protein customer by jumping online, hunt our product down and hit that buy now button. So once again, like, share and subscribe to our podcast so we can continue to bring you these episodes from our one and only Aussie muscle guru, 3 times world champion, Christine Enville.